Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Orthodox Banter with Bojan. I'm the Bojan in question. I'm a reader of the Serbian Orthodox Church and I'm here to answer any questions that you might have that pertain to Eastern Orthodox theology or practice. And today's question comes from Rocky123 would you talk about the purpose of the Christian artist in today's world? Outside of making icons, which I have considered starting to learn, and I feel very lost in the art world. Thank you. Thank you for your question, Rocky. And I would say that the purpose of Christian art has, of course, changed over the centuries. The essential purpose stays the same, and it is to glorify our Creator, the Most Holy Trinity, to magnify the saints, and to be of edification to us as the faithful. However, I would also say that there are some additional purposes to this art, because in today's society where so much content is generated at such enormous pace, and I first realized this with Netflix, for example, because even if you devoted all of your time to all the content you wanted to watch, to listen, to read, there is simply no possibility to consume it all. Now, mind you, this was true since forever, basically. Of course, we are not omnipresent, we are not all-knowing and so on. However, this is especially true today when you can't follow even one content on one platform, much less across all of the different spectrums of art. Now, I think that one special purpose that Christian artists have today is to fight against the darkness, the void, the nothingness. Mind you, this is something different than the spiritual warfare, and this is also present, of course, because we are at war of evil. However, I think that art today is completely devoid of God. It magnifies the man at best, or actual demons at the worst, and you don't even need to see such examples on Netflix. So anyway, how does one do that? If you have a form of art, and people who have tried to define art know how difficult it actually is, so I'm not trying to define it. However, you can sort of imagine the way you approach art as with these, like sliders, as in, for example, something that's close to me, a role-playing game. How much God you want to involve in it? And by the way, it does not always have to be maximum God for maximum intent. Sometimes it is something much more subtle that will work, and especially in today's age, where when something is brazenly Christian, it might put people, push them away. But if something is subtle enough, they just might get interested in what God has to offer to us. And of course, that sounds very mercantile. What does God have to offer to me? However, sometimes that is how people need to be approached in order to realize their proper place with the Most Holy Trinity. So, for example, on one extreme end of the scale, you can create art that's directly involved in worship. For example, with visual arts, it could be, painting icons. With vocal arts, it could be chanting, singing, and so on. In more craftsman-y types of things, it can be creation of reliquaries, of holy vessels, and so on and so forth. I don't know what your denomination is, but at least in Orthodoxy, we do try to tend to make our churches as beautiful as possible, to have as many icons as possible, and so on. I'm not trying to dish, some other denominations out there, but the fact of the matter is, some of them are iconoclastic, and art is not as appreciated there as much in general. Now, on the sort of lower God slider, you can still have things that are very much of God, but they're outside of the experience of worship. For example, you have like novels that deal with Christian themes. You have music that speaks about God or of God, but isn't proper for worship. And I think that a lot of evangelical music is here. I don't think anyone would mind it from the liturgical traditions, such as the Orthodox or Catholics, were it not for the fact that it's actually used in worship. Outside of worship, it's very much okay. And, why not have something like that, for example, in the aftermath of the liturgy or mass or something? That would be perfectly fine. But to actually include it in the worship, that is sort of missing the mark. Again, with visual arts, with painting, you can create like more realistic paintings or portraits of gospel scenes. Some things that are not intended to be actually used in the church for veneration, but still, to edify the faithful. And on the lower end of God's ladder, when it comes to art, again, it might be some things that simply, for example, Thomas Kincaid, I know that a lot of his art is considered kitsch, but it did still sort of speak of God, because he had it up to here with dark and dreary subjects, and again, you can even use dark subjects again for to magnify the Lord. However, his paintings, for example, they don't scream God at you, but he's there, okay, some people might not find him to their liking, but that is fine. Art is always risky, as well as humor. I understand people who really dislike icons and this Byzantine style. I understand them, it's a matter of personal taste. However, as a serious Orthodox Christian, I would never let a personal taste, dissuade me from actually using a specific icon in, prayer and so on. However, when we discuss taste, we are free to like and dislike whatever we want. You can even make video games. You can make all sorts of things. And of course, as artists, sometimes we simply do commissions when our vocation, as it were, turns strictly into, you doing something that's not directly related to God, but still it is God's obedience to you, So I would say that there are many, many facets of art in our Christian life, in today's day and age, and I think that we should actually take care for this art to, in some way or form, but not necessarily always, mind you, speak of God. Recently, I've been painting this painting using egg temperas, so a technique that's generally associated with icons, but of course you can paint anything else with it. And I simply drew a cute little castle on a cute little hilltop surrounded by a nice quaint forest and a bubbling brook amidst flowering hills filled with wheat. And I sort of included maybe a direct Christian references, because the city has a couple of towers with crosses and there's a small, clearly Russian chapel. But for me, it speaks of God. It speaks of this beauty of a landscape that in the end God has made. And who knows, maybe someday, somewhere out there, it might touch somebody. Because ultimately, we do not know how anything we do and influences someone, but art especially is made to influence someone, whether by its beauty primarily or secondary, but sometimes primarily through emotional impact, Again, Orthodoxy has no issue with emotions. It just gives them the proper place. And emotional art is fine as long as it's outside of the scope of worship, so we have to remember that. I hope that I have given you maybe some input. Remember, a lot of people like writing. There's poetry, there's novels. I sort of noticed this trend that whenever literally gifted catechumens start entering the church, they immediately have these high ideas of writing fan fiction involving saints of saints coming to the future or people going to the past to meet a certain saint. And that's fine, why not? I mean, for me, it's not really my fare. But then again, maybe it's a typical novel, but there's that little string of divinity going throughout, you know? And whatever you may create, who knows, maybe God will bless it abundantly. You never know with God, you know? Sometimes, and YouTubers especially experience this, sometimes that something that you create, you know, quickly, you don't really care for much for, explodes. And sometimes something that you poured your heart and soul and mind over and it completely flops. And that's what we have to learn to live with as artists. I hope I have given you some perspective of it, and of course I would like to hear what are of our fellow artists' impressions, but also of people who are not artists, because you know, you might not be an artist, but you still consume art in some way, shape, or form. So please give us, the artists, your input. Bye.